Nothing Personal starts in 30 seconds. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal.
Here you go.
I feel blessed to be with all of you today, Monday morning, April 21st. I took 2 days away at the end of last week, and I'm back. We have a show ready to go. So much happened over the course of the last 4 days that I wanted to catch up on. We have the rundown set, and it's time to start. Open my eyes after a long day of travel, a miserable night of sleep, a couple loads of laundry. I managed to get, sorry for all those listening who actually care about me, under 60 minutes of sleep, eyes open, and it's a breaking news alert that Pope Francis has died. And that's it. You know right then and there that the rundown of every show, whether it's a sports show, whether it is a business show, you're going to have to deal with this and talk about it because it's a major event. Pope Francis, people would say he's been dying for months, weeks, years. Yeah, but it's the end that's sudden, the very, very end. He was the first Pope of the Americas. When he was elected, when he was named, remember the movie Conclave that I thought would win Best Picture? When you saw the smoke come out of the Vatican, you assumed that something special is going to happen because that's what happens when a new pope is elected by the Bishop of Cardinals. I wanted to just mention a couple of things by the College of Cardinals, obviously, a couple of things about Pope Francis. And I'm Jewish. That's not about Pope Francis, but I wanted you to know that this is about, to me, I was always fascinated with the Pope. I grew up in New York City, right across the street from where the Pope would stay when the Pope would come to New York. And I was there when one of the popes, this must have been in the early 80s, Coca, stayed in New York City, right across the street. There's a place on 72nd and Madison, if you would believe that, between Madison and 5th in New York City. And not only do they close the street, it's much more than when a president is there of any country, including our own. Not only do they close the street, but they erect barriers. And I'm talking the type of barriers that we had to get a pass. We had a special way to get into the area where our building was. No deliveries. There were no deliveries really at that time, but no visitors, no nothing while the Pope was in New York, staying at 72nd and Madison. And I was fascinated. I wasn't the most religious person, but I was fascinated by people who engaged in thought, who engaged in discussion, who engaged and helped me form the philosophy that you've come to know, which is live and let live. Pope Francis was an interesting pope. He was liberal, but what's interesting to me is that he was the type of pope that didn't make anybody really happy. The conservatives Catholics were not happy. The liberal Catholics were not happy. He went too far for the conservatives, not nearly far enough for the liberals. How do you do that? You can understand and you can actually invite LGBTQ into your church, but say no same-sex marriage. You can talk about where you stand with abortion, where you are against abortion, yet you are also understanding of a right to choose. Do you think you can be everything to everyone as the CEO of anything? You can't. As the president of a team, as the CEO of a team, as the coach, as the manager, as a parent, you cannot be everything to everyone. It doesn't work. Because if you try to be everyone to everything, you're nothing to everyone. And the Pope's legacy is going to be talked about. I assume that every show is breaking news. In fact, I would assume they'll go the full slate, which I'm not going to do, but I assume they'll go the full slate about it because there's so much to think about. What happens next? What happens next is, do the policies of the current papacy continue? Is there going to be a pope who is as pro-immigration, who has the humility of Pope Francis? Or are you going to see, like when you go from a player's manager, then that manager gets fired, and you go to a strict disciplinarian? Are you going to go to a really conservative pope now, or a really liberal pope? The interesting thing is, this current pope appointed the majority of the current College of Cardinals, who are going to decide who the next pope is. So in theory, they're just going to sort of continue what's been happening with someone who has beliefs. But we've learned in politics that when a president appoints a Supreme Court justice, let's say, that Supreme Court justice will not always behave the way the president thought. And in fact, sometimes the Supreme Court justice will go off the reservation completely. So anytime a new pope comes in, it's an opportunity for people in the church to see how they can get their way to be the way of the pope, to be the way of Catholicism. I'm far more interested in inclusion, obviously. I'm far more interested in living and let live. It's quite a day for the Pope to die, Easter Monday. Today is also Patriots Day. Today is the Boston Marathon. Boston is one of the most Catholic cities in the U.S. All of it coming together in a way that reminds you of some sort of divine being, reminds you of some sort of meaning, or for the cynically impaired, it just reminds you of a Monday. Coincidence. During my times running the Boston Marathon, I always felt a responsibility, not just to remember Boston Strong and what happened with the marathon bombing in 2013, but even before that, for the Boston Marathon I did before that, to think about the people who would come before me and the people who will come after me. You are merely the holder of something for the moment you hold it, and then it is not yours anymore. We could get very philosophical and talk about that is life. We are part of life. We are living for the people who come ahead of us, having stood on the shoulders of the people who came before us. What do you do during that situation? I remember all the marathons I've done, I never thought this way, but Boston's just different. And on a day when the Pope has died in Boston, there will be runners running that race. Yes, you've trained, and people work so hard just to get to the starting line. And then you have to work so hard to get to the finish line. Boston is a really challenging course. I wonder how many people will take the time while running today. Do they use it as a break from their deep thought, or do they use the deep thought as fuel to get them through the marathon? And there is no more spiritual place than the road of the Boston Marathon. The Red Sox have an afternoon game today, Coca. They always have a home game. I didn't even check, to tell you the truth. I don't need to check. They are playing. They generally play at 11 a.m. on Patriots Day. The whole point is, by the time you get to where you're supposed to get to, there is a game going on. If you're delayed, like I am because I'm slow, the game may be over and you may be running through Boston where there are Red Sox fans, happy or unhappy, but always partying. But you combine it with Easter Monday, you combine it with the Pope dying today, and I'm wondering, what is the mood? Is everyone somber? In Judaism, you celebrate those who have died. Shiva is something you go to after someone dies, and it's supposed to be a party. There's food, there's bagels, there's Nova, there's cream cheese, chicken salad, tuna salad, fruit salad. The purpose is to tell stories. The purpose is to let go of any of the anchor, any of the family dynamics, any of the politics, anything. And there's just love and memories and starting the legacy of that person. The Pope is going to have all sorts of things written about him today, Pope Francis. I would ask you, as we head into a important week of sports, as playoffs are beginning in the NHL, they're underway in the NBA, MLB season is underway. Just take a minute, no matter your religion, take a minute to think about somebody who gives his life for others, who tries as CEO of a religion to effectuate change to a system that's broken, tries to redo and undo and deal with hundreds of years of pedophilia. The opposite of what Gail Benson did, who's trying to cover it up. Pope Francis did his best to try to get people to understand, to take responsibility for their actions. I don't know if you say rest in peace to a pope, Coca. I don't know what the appropriate thing to say is. I will ask a Catholic friend of mine after the show. But whatever that word is, let's just pretend between us that I've said it. Pope Francis died on Easter Monday. Drubbing. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It is Monday, April 21st, 2025, and drubbing. 8 games. 8 game ones. You could argue the Warriors-Rockets game was close, but whatever, I wouldn't. The Nuggets-Clippers goes into overtime. The Nuggets win 112-110. Other than that, every game one was horrific. A drubbing. Well, it depends what side you're on. If you're on the winning side, then you're happy. If you're a fan of the Memphis Grizzlies or the Boston Celtics, or pick your team. The Knicks had to come back. They had a good 21-0 run to win 123-112 over the Pistons in game one. I'm watching these game ones as much as I can. With travel and various other things, it was hard to watch 48 straight, but I watched plenty of each, and I was reminded of how meaningless game ones were in my time. Game ones are hard to win. When you win, you think you're going to win the series. All the stats come out. The winner of game one wins X number of times. That is true. And I have a ring because of a bunch of game ones that I won. But I realize the number of teams who don't win game ones, who think to themselves, we're not out of it. We still have a shot. I think the only loser of game one that is thinking that is the Memphis Grizzlies. They lost by 51 points, which is hard to imagine. I think only 3 teams have lost by that much since 1973. I'm committed to trying, Coca, for this whole Knick playoff run to only give stats post 1973. I had a conversation with someone at an airport yesterday. Sitting on the tarmac with Mark and Kelly Ripa. That was something last night. Trying to understand, do you have a live show tomorrow? I got a live show tomorrow. Sitting here without a gate for an hour after a 5-hour flight seems like a problem as the clock strikes midnight. Yet, all's well that ends well. Don't need a lot of sleep. Here I am, on time, on budget. I don't know why that just came in my head, actually, Coca. We were talking about the Grizzlies. I don't know why we were talking about the Grizzlies. Ja Morant. We were talking about Ja Morant saying the Grizzlies will never play as badly. Oh, we were talking about 1973. Thank you, Coca. 1973 is going to be my number. All playoff run. It's the last time the Knicks won a title. And I was talking to people about the drought. Because to me, the Knicks are in a drought because I became a Knicks fan in 1974. How about the cruel reality of that? As you know, 1974 is over 50 years ago, and I have not seen a Knicks championship. And I figured that had to be the longest drought in professional sports. And instead of having the debate, which I no longer debate with people, I've really become much less sharp because of this, because I've got a built-in crutch that my number one philosophy is I'm not going to waste my time. Not going to waste my time debating what the longest drought is. I used to do that, but now I carry this thing with me that's an encyclopedia the size of a 2x4 inches, that is. Turns out Who got this, Coca? If I said to you, who's got the longest drought without a championship in all of sports? I didn't come up with it. Would you have come up with the Arizona Cardinals? 76 years. Just wouldn't have come up with that. I wouldn't have come up with the Guardians, the Cleveland Indians / Guardians. With the basketball, I thought the Knicks were certainly number one. Turns out I'm wrong. It's the Atlanta Hawks. All this is from memory. So all of it may be wrong. Correct me if you can, if you may, if you want. The point is the Knick drought since 73. It doesn't even make the paper. But for me, it's everything. The Knicks obviously believe this is their year. I've believed it's their year every year, including when they were only going to win 20 games and go 20-62, because I had hope before every opening game. I can't explain why you take a team with Larry Demick and Toby Knight, Sugar Ray Richardson and Ray Williams, and you say to yourself, we've got Ken Norton. We've got Ken Bannister, not Ken Norton. Oi, 4869. We've got Ken the Animal Bannister. We got a shot. Kenny Skywalker. This is our year. I thought the Knicks were going to lose to the Pistons in game one, and they come back 21-0 run. The game that I wanted to talk about, though, was the Lakers-Timberwolves game. The Timberwolves with A-Rod sitting courtside as the hopefully next owner of the Timberwolves. He has not been approved yet, but he and his partner Mark will get approved. Sitting there courtside watching his Timberwolves beat the Lakers in game one. And I realized that Alex Rodriguez is not the person cheering most for the Minnesota Timberwolves. You'd think as an owner, you're the number one. No. The person cheering the most for the Timberwolves is Nico Harrison. Let there be no doubt. Nico Harrison, the GM of the Mavericks, they lost in the play-in tournament, and they're lottery bound. They're a team in turmoil, but wouldn't it be perfect for Luka and the Lakers to lose in the first round to the T-Wolves? Now, Nico will say that he loves Luka and he's cheering, not cheering. All executives do it. They're all full of it. We all cheer. We all root against our competitors. We all want them to lose. There are multiple times in the playoffs when your team is not in the playoffs that you don't even watch the playoffs, which I used to do. I would watch them, but I'm rooting for everyone to lose. Think about how ridiculous that is in a game where there's guaranteed to be a winner, where you're sitting there watching the whole game, rooting for everyone to lose. Both teams, you're guaranteed to be 50% disappointed. Glass half full. Every game you watch, you are 50% thrilled to bits. Notwithstanding Magic Johnson's tweet about J.J. Redick, which was wholly inappropriate when he tweeted that Coach Redick is a good coach but did not coach a good game after game one. Notwithstanding that there are players who believe that the Lakers are not physical enough, not big enough, don't play enough defense, all the things that came out when Luka was traded to the Lakers, but they played well. They got the seed, the high seed. Even with LeBron being old, still effective. Luka's still the star of that team. The fact of the matter is Luka right? Or is Luka wrong? Can you judge Luka after one round, after 2 rounds, after 1 year, after 2 years? He's 25. When do you judge that trade? There are many people who will use recency bias and confirmation bias if the T-Wolves beat the Lakers to say, look, the Mavs did the right thing. If the Lakers win a round or 2 or 3, then everyone will say, oh, look, Nico should be absolutely canned. I'm not sure that I think that after 1 round, anybody should say anything about anybody. So much to talk about. Let's remind everyone that today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. How many times do you have a talented player who you just can't stand their behavior, but you love their talent? We had a bunch of them. I've talked about them on this show. Hanley Ramirez, great example, the talent. Jazz Chisholm has talent. Now, I don't recall Hanley ever hitting below 200, but that said, Jazz Chisholm, the former Marlin, former Diamondback, current Yankee, talent. He did something this weekend that is a total violation of Major League Baseball policy, and then tried to hide behind freedom of speech. Let's talk about it. Jazz Chisholm got called out on strikes, argued balls and strikes, got ejected, lost his temper, went to the clubhouse, which you do after you're ejected, immediately got on his phone, and bless his heart, he tweeted immediately about how bad the umpire did in calling the ball strike. MLB immediately suspended him for 1 game. Jazz Chisholm is appealing the suspension. Wait to see, Coca. Wait to see when we tell you something's going to happen. If it does, fine. If it doesn't, fine. We'll revisit it no matter what. Wait to see. Jazz Chisholm's suspension is going to be upheld. You are not allowed to be on your phone during a game. It is a very strict rule because of gambling. Number 2, you are not allowed to chastise umpires publicly, and tweeting is even more public than meeting the beat writers after the game. So not only did Jazz violate the rule of tweeting against umpires, he violated the rule of cell phone usage during games. This tweet came out during the game, right after the ejection. The reason why Jazz is appealing and the union is despondent to have to even argue on his behalf is Jazz said, I think it's freedom of speech. I think we should be able to say whatever we want to say. At the end of the day, it's a lash out. It probably wouldn't happen again. I would like to once and for all explain what freedom of speech is. It is the most misunderstood concept ever. You do not have the right to violate the rules of your employer and then hide under the Constitution as your reason for doing it. That's not a freedom of speech that you have. Your constitutional protection does not apply to tweeting from the clubhouse. It doesn't apply to violating a rule that Major League Baseball has against public statements, against umpires, against other players. I do not understand why we continue this day and age to misapply amendments, misapply constitutional rights because of a thought that someone has that, oh, this must apply to me, and they're putting their thumb on my neck. They're trying to bring me down. No. This has nothing to do with color. This has nothing to do with experience, with past, with anything. This has to do with money. Not using your cell phone during a game is money related. Not going against umpires publicly, it's money related. That's not the type of league that Major League Baseball wants to be. It's not the type of league. Can we go back, Coca, for 1 second, if you don't mind, to the Mavericks? How many times did Mark Cuban get fined for talking about the NBA referees? I bet in his career, if I just said an over-under, I would say $2 million in career fines for speaking out against referees or violating other league policies. And the over-under for the number of times that he said, no, it's free speech, the over-under is 0.5. Do me a favor, bet the under. He never once said, you're violating my right to free speech. It's preposterous. Make sure you have that wait to see, Coca. Let's talk about the Braves for a second. Something happened with an injured player, Ronald Acuna, and the old Met. Coca, do you remember when Kelenic was the Met? I don't know where he got traded. I want to say he got traded to Seattle from the Mets for Robinson Cano. Is there a chance that's right, Coca? You'll have to go check it out. It's hard to remember that. Kelenic was this major prospect, and he ended up being fine, not nearly an all-star. not nearly a great player, but he's still young. Then he got moved to the Braves, where he's playing because of the Acuna injury. Let's just say that this guy was touted, Jared Kelenic, top 100 prospect, a can't-miss guy, service time manipulation, the whole package. Meanwhile, he's been humbled as a big leaguer, and he did something this weekend that we talk about with our players a lot. Do not pimp a home run. Because what if it's not a home run? There is something about our society where we reward the behavior of people who do things that are so wrong because they don't make sense. For example, when you hit the ball and you think it's going out, here's an idea that we try to teach our players. Run your kishkas off until you see the second base umpire give you the home run call. Because if you don't and the ball goes off the wall because it's not a home run, or it turns out to be a pop-up, but it's dropped. Side note, Coca. For all the baseball fans out there and for all the baseball players, I have a good one for you to think about. Have you ever seen a guy hit a pop-up to the infield and he runs to first base, the ball's high in the air, he circles around first base, and the ball gets caught, and he's out and goes back to the dugout? We told our players, do me one favor on balls like that. Run to first base and stand on the base. The players who run past first base and they're between first and second when a ball gets caught, if the ball's dropped, they're going to get thrown out. The odds are pretty good that in your career, that'll never happen. Who's going to drop it? But what if it happens one time and you get tagged out? It happened to Kelenic just this weekend. He hits a ball that he thinks is a home run, so he's watching it out of the box, and then he's jogging, and then it turns out it's off the wall, and he's thrown out at second. I have told you, but there's so many new listeners. Jeff Conine's biggest regret of his career, was the time in the 2003 playoffs in a super important game against the San Francisco Giants when he did not run a ball out and ended up on first when he should have been on second. It is the most disappointed and angry he ever was, and this is a guy who could crush helmets when he didn't get the job done. As Marlins fans, you may have read about Griffin Conine, his dislocated shoulder. Whatever happens with him, he's on the 60-day injured list. He was playing every day, playing well. The breaks of this game, of any game, when you need your body, are just brutal. So the story here is that Jared Kelenic gets tagged out at second base, and Ronald Acuna calls it out. He called out the fact that his own manager, Brian Snitker, did not say a word to Kelenic and said, by the way, when I did this, I got removed from the game. And it's true. When Acuna pimped something, got thrown out, Snitker waited an inning and then pulled him. What exactly was the reason that Snitker acted differently toward Kelenic? Is it the evolution of the manager? Is it that he got older? Is it kids today, players today are so different that you can't even discipline them about anything for fear you're going to lose them? I really can't imagine that's the case. If I am Alex Anthopoulos today as president of baseball operations, I am furious with what Snitker did. We have to be consistent. It's not about treating one player differently than the other. If you're going to discipline Acuna, you got to discipline Kelenic. Acuna was a way better player, by the way. Way better upside, way bigger help to a team. And Snitker basically doubled down. He said, you want to know the truth? He actually said this. I wasn't watching that play. I know he got thrown out at second, and I didn't see it until this morning, and then I talked to him about it. That is horse hockey. You've got coaches who are with you in the dugout, players who are with you in the dugout, front office who can get to you in the dugout. And the thought and the story you're going to go with is that you didn't see it. There's plenty of things a manager doesn't see, but the manager gets informed of what's happening so the manager can make decisions. Can you imagine not disciplining someone because they claim they didn't see it and then they see the video the next morning? It's bogus. After every game, the front office is in with the manager talking about the game. There's not one game out of 162 games over 18 years that I wasn't a part of that. If I didn't go to 162, I went to 150. I was a part of 150. You are in the manager's office. You're talking about the game and getting ready for the next game. Even if it's in silence after a bad loss, if there is something acute to deal with, you have to. Kellenic getting thrown out at second is one of those acute things. And now you've got a problem with Acuna. It is a total distraction that was self-inflicted and avoidable. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to switch to football because the Commanders are back in the news, and it's not Daniel Snyder. It's Josh Harris with some interesting news for Commanders fans. We'll talk about that after the break. Whether you call it soccer, football, or something else, you can take a shot to win cash with Heineken and DraftKings while watching the world's most popular sport. Make predictions on some of the biggest matches of the year and compete for $5,000 a contest in 15 free pools. Heineken is a lager for any league, and you'll enjoy action from the first to the last. Must be 21 plus to enter. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com/Heineken for details. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It's David Samson. Thank you for hanging in there. I think I'm wearing the same jacket I was wearing during a Heineken commercial just now. It's always funny to see the rotation in action. Let's talk about a little movie that I had not heard of until Jason Stark asked me to watch it. I love getting recommendations from people. You all know I watch a movie every day. Plane rides are a time for multiple movies, long plane rides. I watched a little baseball movie called Eephus. I'm not sure that anyone's ever heard of it. I had not heard of it. I don't know why I'm extrapolating that me to everyone else, but I try to hear of movies. I love when you give me recommendations of movies I haven't heard of. But to say there's a baseball movie I haven't heard of is a little problematic. This is a movie about a bunch of older players past their prime, some beer bellies, playing with a few players who are closer to their prime in a game on a field that is disappearing because of the progress of life. And they're not professionals, but they're in uniform. It's sort of like a beer league or a softball league or a penal league. And it's got a bunch of quirky characters. The whole movie is this game. And it's the game within the game. It's the people having conversations about the game or about their life or about why they have to leave or don't want to leave or what they're like when they're on the mound at bat versus what they are when they're in the field versus what they are as a family man, as a father or a husband or a son. What a quirky, interesting movie. It's called Eephus, Eephus. You can get it wherever you find your ability to rent movies. I don't know that it ever had a theater run, Coca. It is not going to make my top 5 baseball movies of all time. You know that. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it. Anytime you can have a script that has some interesting moments, it's better than a hot poker in the eye. Eephus. Congratulations, Josh Harris. We're moving on to the Commanders. You did it. A stadium deal to return the Commanders to where RFK Stadium used to be. A brand new stadium. This is big. Remember, the Commanders are in Landover. They're at FedEx Field only through 2027. But now they're going to have a brand spanking new stadium. May not open until 2030. So they may have to extend FedEx Field, try to plug some leaks for 3 more years, but this is major. Why? Because do you realize that what the Commanders are getting is a 174-acre federal land site, and they are getting the right to develop it? Do you know that Josh Harris is doing one of the biggest real estate deals in all of professional sports in Washington, D.C., enough to make the Lerner family put a tear in their eye? He's willing to contribute up to $2.5 billion. Do you remember this is the same area where Washington, D.C. had to build Nationals Park in order to get the Expos to move to Washington? Do you remember this is where Ted Leonsis has said, hey, we want to leave, but then he ended up staying? Leaving, staying. The Commanders have been looking for a new stadium for years, but first they had to get rid of the owner, Daniel Snyder. Then they had to change everyone's view of the team. Then they got to really talk about the deal they wanted. And all the district is contributing of Columbia is $850 million. $850 million. But they're calling it, it's just infrastructure. So here's what's funny about what owners are doing right now. They get to say they built a stadium with private funds, even though every one of them uses public money. But if you use the public money for highways, utilities, and various improvements, like an exit ramp or some sort of change, you get to say, hey, that wasn't for the construction of the stadium, but it was clearly for the help of the development of the parcel. Not much in there about who's sharing revenues from the parcel, but you can bet your sweet bippy it's not the DC area. There is obviously major local opposition to this deal. It's the same mayor who just did that $515 million deal with Leonsis for Capital One Arena. There are so many budget issues in the district, and now there are 2 stadium projects going on at once. The Commanders deal is not voted on. It's not confirmed, but there's been a lot of handshaking. But as you know, from handshake to signed document to funding, go talk to the boys in Tampa. You can do a press conference, for crying out loud, Meatloaf, announcing it, and a deal still doesn't come together. What I love about this is that the public money in the Commanders deal, here's the rumor, because it's not done yet, and these deals change from handshake to papering, but there's about, out of the $850 million, think about this math, $350 million of it would be paid all the way in 2032. And what the public is saying to its constituents is, listen, this is a major but for. I've spoken to you about tax incremental districts, tax increment districts, where it's all incremental revenue. It's the but for. If it weren't for this stadium, there wouldn't be this development here. Well, there'd be something, unless it'd be swampland. But what the public is saying, what the mayor is saying is, we're contributing $850 of infrastructure, but don't worry. 350 of that will get paid way down the line. And what we're going to use are taxes generated by the new development. So what they're saying is, we're doing this new development for Josh Harris. He'll do the development. He'll reap the benefits. There will be taxes generated from the development. Then we'll take those taxes, and instead of using them for our general fund or to balance our budget or to help teachers or first responders, we're going to take that tax-generated revenue and we're going to give it back to the stadium project. It's a thing of beauty. I'm in. As a sports president who built the stadium, I'm out as it relates to how honestly this is being financed. All these creative ways are PR spin for political protection, and that's it. The reality is that Josh Harris doesn't give a tinker's damn in what order the money comes in or in what year the money comes in, because he's using that to bond what he needs to do today. And then you pay it back over 30 years over the term of the lease. You get the depreciation from construction, from the development. There are tremendous tax incentives. Plus, you're getting public money. This is not a grift. It's not a scam. It's a business deal. And the business deal that DC wants to do is they want to be in the business of sports. They don't want to lose teams outside the district. The irony of that is that this football stadium, I love all these football deals, Coca. Love every last one of them. 10 games a year. But don't worry, tons of other events and concerts. We'll see how this one goes. Let's take a look at what's happening with Portland. I'm into stadium deals. You know I am. It's occupational hazard. I got a text, Coca, from someone I went on the radio with in Portland. It was a local Portland station. And texted me just the other day, I think it was this weekend, asking whether or not this Oregon State Senate bill that passed, whether or not this means that expansion in MLB is going to Portland. Portland did a funny thing. They have a bunch of renderings. They're passing a bunch of bills, all in a way to try to convince baseball that Portland is the place for expansion. Let me explain what bill was passed in Oregon. It's a bill that is a jock tax. A jock tax is something that doesn't create any extra tax on a fan. It doesn't create any extra tax on a player. This is another example of a tax revenue, a tax stream that is collected and then given back out to the team, to the entity that caused the collection to be made in the first place. So the theory is that players in Portland, on the Portland MLB team, or visiting players who will now play in Portland and have to pay tax in Oregon, because you know that players pay tax in every state in which they play, whether it's 1 game, 3 games, or 19 games. What they're saying is, MLB, we're going to finance a stadium here. We're going to put ourselves in position for you to choose us. And listen to me, my constituents. Listen to me, my people who fear for your safety in downtown Portland because it's become a crack den with needles everywhere. Listen to me. We've got you covered. And the way we've got you covered is that we're going to take all the taxes. If we have a $10 million player and he's paying $5 million because he plays half his games in Portland, whatever tax that would be paid, whatever income tax, state tax, any sort of tax, we will give it right back. All this bill did was raise the cap to $800 million of what can be given to a project that they're claiming is a $2 billion ballpark. And here's the craziest part. If players' salaries don't generate the taxes that they are projecting will be generated, and they cannot get to $800 million in rebates, then that $800 million is gone. This is like a soft bill. Flaccid. If you think that Major League Baseball looks at this jock tax bill and says, oh, that's $800 million towards the $2 billion, you can book it. No, they look at it and say, I'm happy to look at the projections, but I'm really not sure what the payroll is going to be of the new Portland baseball team because, man, oh, man, we've had expansion teams before. We've had teams that have relocated. We've had all sorts of things. Payrolls go up, payrolls go down. We need a promise. I've told people in Montreal, Portland, San Antonio, Nashville, Mexico City, all the different people where Samson, Coca et al. Have done consulting work. We've said the same thing. You want to be an expansion team in baseball? It's a very simple equation. You're going to need to build a stadium without any contribution from the owner. Hard stop, because the owner is going to give $2 billion just to get into the club. Then they're going to have to spend another couple $100 million to start an organization to get one going before you even capture any revenues. Then there has to be a ballpark. None of this Florida Marlins expansion into a football stadium, hoping a new stadium comes somewhere down the pike. The new stadium has to be signed, sealed, and delivered, and you can't have the public, its contribution, be hazy. I've had a lot of examples of hard to pin down, hazy public funding. And what happens is the league requires and the team requires there to be a set number, a contractually obligated number on the downside, and you solve for that downside. Now, if the jock tax generates 800 million or more, I'm going to want access to that, of course. I'm not going to want to cap it. But if it's less, I have to assume that that is the number it's going to generate, and that's it. It's like scrubbing projections. It's like when you do a business plan and you've got financials, and then you look at the financials, and then you cut 30% off every revenue assumption, and you add 30% to every expense assumption. And then you look at the financials again, and then you say, all of a sudden, this business is not worth what you think. All of a sudden, I don't think this is even viable. That is what MLB does. That is what the public is supposed to do, but doesn't often do. Portland's trying. I give them credit for that, but we're a long way from picking and choosing an expansion city. Nothing personal pick of the day presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. We've got 2 games in the association tonight. 2 game 2s. We've got the Detroit Pistons, who have been in New York for a couple days now. Not as long as Will Manso is in Cleveland, that's for sure. But the Pistons are in New York. They are getting 6.5 points in game 2 against the Knicks. What are the odds of another 21-0 run by the Knicks? Thoughts? Anybody? I love the Knicks, but those Pistons, they're a tough cover, number 1. Number 2, fresh legs, young. Number 3, you want to get 1 game out of the first 2. You didn't get game 1. You want game 2. You're getting 6.5. We're taking the Pistons. They're a better 6 seed than you realize. The Knicks could still win the game, but we're taking the Pistons plus 6.5 points against the Knicks. And then we get the exciting game 2, which is Nuggets-Clippers. The Nuggets did pull out a game. The Clippers are a fascinating team with Leonard and Harden playing. The irony of the Clippers getting better without Paul George, I love it. It makes me smile. The Nuggets with the worst coaching change of the last week. But the fact of the matter is, when you have Jokic on your team, you can't be underdogs. I just don't buy it. Now, it's not like he has the best team around him, but it's a damn good team. A championship caliber team. Maybe not as good as the Thunder this year, but my God, better than the Clippers. We're taking the Nuggets +1 versus the Clippers. We're taking the Nuggets to take a 2-0 lead because I don't even think the game's going to be that close. Frankly, Coca, I thought the Nuggets were going to have to give 4.5 points. So I'm not exactly sure how it ended up. Odds subject to change on DraftKings, but Nuggets +1 versus the Clippers. Those are the 2 nothing personal picks of the day presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. For those of you who don't remember, Wednesday was our last live show. We had the Bulls giving 1 to the Heat. That did not work. The Heat crushed them. But we also had an underdog. We had the San Francisco Giants +124 against NOLA and the Phillies. That was back on Wednesday night. We couldn't understand why NOLA was favored in that game. And so we went 1-1. We are now 42-41 for the season. Still above 500 after 83 picks. Okay. As we conclude here, I want to bring it back because right now it is 8:49 a.m. If you're watching this on DraftKings, it could be 9:49 or 10:49. If you're listening to this, it could be any time. But right now, people in Boston are getting ready. They're on the bus, going to the start line. It's a point-to-point race in Boston. And there's a bunch of porta potties, and everyone's nervous, and you're cold, and you're hot. You don't know what to do. You don't know what the day's going to bring because something's going to go wrong. Every marathon, there's going to be a glitch. It's like life. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be bumps along the way, but the question is, can you keep going? We are tomorrow, 8 a.m. It's just business. Welcome back. This is nothing personal.